On this video, I'm going to take you through how to document a business requirements document. Now, it's important to note that a business requirements document is an important document in a project. Now, as you are already aware that there are quite a lot of templates in the web, and also you could find quite a lot of books written on business requirements documents, in other words, how to document them and how to structure them. The objective of this video is to take you through some of the important components of a business requirements document, because it's important for you to understand how to document a simple and a straightforward business requirement document for any project. So let's first go through some of the introductory phases of a business requirement document, or in other words, what are the important things that should be included at the beginning of a business requirement document, and then we will go through some of the detailed subsets or some of the detailed components of a business requirements document. Now, some of the important things that should be included in the introductory phase of a business requirement document are the objectives of the project. Now, this is where you would define or you would outline what exactly the project is trying to achieve and why it's trying to achieve this specific objective. So you might write a couple of lines, not too much, maybe 3 to 4 sentences or maybe a half a page, just to outline what's the specific objectives of the project and why the project was initiated. The next important section, or one of the important sections in the introduction phase, is to define the scope of the project. In other words, it's important in a business requirement document you should clearly define what the project is going to achieve and what are the business requirements that are going to be met and which ones will not be met. When we go through the actual business requirement document, I will discuss a bit more on this. And one of the other sections also you should include in an introductory section in a business requirement document is you have to define the assumptions, constraints, and any dependencies. In other words, in most of the projects there are a couple of details that will be assumed to be correct, and also there are other projects there are limitations or there are constraints and also dependencies. So I will discuss each one of these in detail in the next section, but this is an important section that should be also outlined in a business requirement document, most preferably in the introductory section. And then also you have to discuss about the risks and the benefits of the actual project itself, or in other words, the risks around meeting the business requirements and also the benefits of meeting the business requirements. Usually the cost and time and quality will be mainly discussed in this section. Now remember, when I say the introductory section, what I mean is when you start writing a business requirement document, it's quite important that these various sections are covered in the beginning of the document. So now let's go through each one of these and discuss a bit more in detail. Now, before discussing on the objectives of the project, let's talk a little bit about the version history table and the document reviewers and approvers table. Now the version history table is where you would outline or you would draft which version is the current version. In other words, when you are documenting a business requirement document, it's very normal for the documentation process to go through a couple of iterations or a couple of cycles. Now this is quite usual practice, because normally when you document a business requirement document, you will send the initial draft to the relevant stakeholders and maybe to the project manager or even to other senior business analysts. Once you send the business requirement document, they will have a look and come back to you with more questions or any changes that you should make or any other suggestions. Now once they come back with this kind of feedback and comments, you would draft another version, which might be version 1.1 or version 2, etc. So it's important to have a table which exactly says which version is the current version, when it was written, that's on the date column, and what are the high level changes. So for example, you might have version 1.3, and in the changes column you might say incorporated the reporting requirements, etc. So the version history table is quite useful to track progress and also to keep an eye on how many versions have been written and what are the main changes that has been incorporated. Now the next important table, as you can see here, is the document reviewers and approvers table, or you could call it review stroke approval. There are different business requirement templates might have different kind of wordings, but the bottom line is that this table literally will have the names of all the relevant stakeholders who should review the business requirement document, and also all the stakeholders who should approve or sign off the business requirement document. Now remember, it's very important that this table includes all the important stakeholders that should approve the business requirement document, because it's very important that, for example, if you miss an important stakeholder from this table, and if that stakeholder is not aware of the detailed business requirements, there is a high chance that if one of those stakeholders come back to you or to the project manager or even to the senior executive at a later stage and saying that some of his or her requirements have not been met, then it might be an issue, since the project has not met all the stakeholders' requirements for that specific phase. So it's quite important that you include all the important stakeholders' names in this table, and of course there will be some stakeholders who will not have to sign off the business requirement document, but who should be made aware of the changes or of the project. So their names will be as a reviewer, just to review the business requirement document and to give some sort of feedback.